Today, it's my pleasure to be speaking with Desi Anderson of Carlock, Illinois. She's the owner of the Hesed House Venue, a glorious wedding venue in Hayworth, Illinois, as well as a wife, a mother, and now a politician, as she's running for state senator of the 46th District in Illinois. And while she lives in Illinois now, she's originally from Bulgaria, a southeastern European country bordering Romania, Serbia, and Greece. And how she came here is an interesting story that we'll definitely cover today. Before we kick things off, though, if you find this episode valuable, please give it a like, give it a share, and subscribe to my channel on YouTube or like my page on Facebook. And hey, leave a comment while you're at it because we'll be sure to read them all. And with all that said, Desi, thank you so much for coming on to my show today. I appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Paul. I appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure. Yeah. So, as I mentioned in that intro there, you're originally from Bulgaria, and if my research is correct, you came here when you were like 8 years old to a family in Oregon or something, and tell me a bit about what life was like, if you can even remember back that far, before you were 8 years old.
No, I'm not that old. So my memory's still pretty good.
How old are you, just to put it out there?
Yeah, 35.
Okay.
Getting closer to my 40s, but all is good.
You know, it ticks me off when I hear people start worrying about their age too much, especially when they're in their 30s.
No.
Right now, I've heard an expert, David Sinclair, maybe he's from UCLA or I don't know exactly, but he's the leading expert on aging, and he says that people are going to it's going to be an explosion of people living until they're like 120s. And he says the first person that's going to live until 150 has already been born. So anyway,
maybe it's
40
me.
Ain't so old. Yeah, maybe it is you.
Goodness, we'll need to fix the Social Security crisis here in the U.S. if I'm going to be getting that.
That's right.
No,
I never thought about that actually. But anyway, yeah, your upbringing.
Yeah. So I was born in Bulgaria. I was actually abandoned when I was 10 days old in the streets and brought into an orphanage, and where they named me. The way Bulgaria works during that time, and I think currently they have a similar model too, is if parents weren't able to take care of their babies, they basically had a social service system or set up where you could abandon your child for 2 years, you could visit, and during that time, it was meant for parents to get on their feet economically, to create stability, whatever might be the issue of why they're not able to take care of their baby.
So it was like a country-sanctioned or state-sanctioned drop-off system, or what?
So it's their social welfare system is what they had during that setup. It's not a full abandonment. It was more of, hey, this is a safe area where you can drop off your child in an orphanage. Mm-hmm. We will have state workers or country workers. They would work in those orphanages and be part of that process if parents wanted to come and visit their babies during that time.
Very interesting. Okay.
Often what happens is a lot of parents don't come back during those 2 years to visit, or even after the 2 years. Then they start the process of abandonment. So what does that look like? They start reaching out via local newspapers, TV ads, whatever it is, to let family members know, hey, you know, your sister, or you might be the aunt or the uncle of, is there any interest of adopting this child or having this child brought up in your home? Kind of similar to the foster care system. If a parent loses their right, oftentimes they can look at guardianship, if it's grandparents or someone within the home, if aunts can adopt. So if those steps are all exhausted and a child has no family, bio-family, extended come, then what they do is go through a full abandonment adoption process. The baby is fully abandoned. Now they can actually hit what they call international registries for adoption. This basically starts notifying local adoption agencies, hey, this child, this is the background, this is what we believe we have on medical history, family history, and oftentimes it's European adoption agencies Canadian-based or U.S. are the top 3 regions that adopt. Australia sometimes as well. And then those agencies will start working within their local infrastructure they already have set up with often lawyers or agencies in that region, and basically start the process of trying to place children into forever homes through the avenue of international adoptions.
And real quick, before you continue, aim this directly at your mouth. So it's like shooting right at your mouth.
Did you just stop recording?
Nope, no, it's still going.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, you're totally fine. I do it all the time. Everyone will put it right here, and then they'll start going like this. And then, so yeah, right at your mouth.
Okay.
Perfect. That sounds great. Okay, so anyway, they're working hard to get these kids adopted is what it seems like.
Yeah, and oftentimes the 2 groups that you would see in Bulgaria, I can't speak for any other countries, would be the ones that would be considered outcast of society, right? Mm-hmm. So oftentimes high special need kiddos getting abandoned, and then those that are coming from a minority ethnic background. So myself would be included in one. So my background is actually Gypsy Roma.
Gypsy Roma, does that mean like from India, that travel all around?
Yeah, so I can't remember I want to say 15th century. A group traveled from northern India and southern Pakistan, the Kashmir area, immigrated into Europe and settled. And then over time, clearly they expanded and had generations there where they raise kiddos and families. So that's the background. So it's weird because people are like, gosh, you don't look Bulgarian when I say I'm born in Bulgaria.
What do Bulgarian people look like?
So very Eastern European, like a Ukrainian or Russian.
Oh, so whiter.
White, blonde hair or brunette. The Cyrillic alphabet, which Russia and Ukraine use, actually started in Bulgaria and traveled up. So if you look at the Bulgarian language, Russian or Ukrainian, it all looks very similar. Well, it's because it's the same alphabet, which most people probably don't realize that. So I was clearly not wanted for whatever the reason is. I don't have family history. I was never really given explanation, have very limited information on who mom was, no information on dad.
Have you ever met mom?
No. So most international adoptions are closed. What that means is once someone in the U.S. or Europe or Canada, wherever, adopts that child, birth parents have no rights to find out what happened to their child. They view that as mom and dad have fully given up rights. Mm-hmm. That means they don't get any info. Some adoptions are considered open. A lot of adoptions here in the U.S. that are domestic, where you have kids that are going through foster care and maybe a family wants to adopt them through that foster care system, they could easily have an open adoption. Say mom and dad lost their rights here because they're incarcerated. Mom and dad still could have the right to visit their child and see where they're at and meet the new family if they wanted to. If both parties agree to have an open adoption, then they can have family history if they wanted to down the road, and kind of piece that. There's some pros and cons on both sides when it comes to adoption, and that's one of the hottest debates actually in the adoption world. International adoption, closed adoption, domestic adoption, open adoption.
Yeah, I could see how sides on each of those, both sides on, they should be closed and they should be open. Like I could see how both sides would have some points to support what they want, I guess.
Yeah, so like the main pro for a closed adoption is oftentimes the adoptive parents fear that bio family may come back 16 years later, right? The child could be 16 years old and say, hey, we actually want our child back. Mm-hmm. that could get very heated and contested, and the fear is bio family may get those rights back legally because they are the bio parents. Would those adoptive parents then lose the 16 years of raising their child?
Mm-hmm.
So it goes both ways. But I think a lot of people would do international adoption with the comfort knowing it's harder for bio families to try to get a child that they've often prayed for a long time, and it's been part of the family process to grow their family.
So what do you remember about Bulgaria? Like, what do you remember about your experience, the feeling of being in whatever orphanage I would assume that you were in?
Yeah.
Do you have any feelings of abandonment? And before you answer, I know I'm telling you to do all these things with the mic. Pull it like a few inches away just so we can totally see your face.
So I had it too close.
Too close.
I mean, too far away. Now it's too close. Now
it's perfect because it's aimed at you and it's just the right distance away. See, now we can see your face on the screen. Okay.
I'm trying, folks.
You're doing great.
First time on the Paul Garcia show.
That's right. Maybe the first of many, but you're doing wonderful. I'm the one who gave the bad directions.
Hey,
but
that's okay.
But anyway, yeah, what do you remember about being in the orphanage and what do you remember feeling?
Yeah, so Bulgaria had their own, and I still, just like any country, social and culture issues. So like I said, those that are in the orphanage are outcasts of society for a reason. Society has already said your disability is making you an outcast, your skin color, your hair color, whatever it may be, right? And for me, it was my skin color. The gypsies, it's actually outlawed. You don't say the word gypsy anymore. They're
in
called
Bulgaria?
In Bulgaria, Eastern Europe, in Europe when you're traveling. The appropriate term now is to call them the Roma people. So the term, I got gypped, comes from that people group, which most people don't probably realize when they say that. Oh, I got gypped.
And is that supposed to be like say that the gypsy people, these Roma people, were rip-off people? Like they would rip you off?
They would steal, right?
Steal, okay.
And that's what they were known for, and that's the label that they received. Now, were all gypsies? Did they all steal and rob people? Who knows? I can't speak for the whole entire group. But that's what they got the label, and that's what they people were starting to call them. So basically, it's very offensive word, right? So clearly, there's a reason why they don't want to be referred as gypsies. So they're now called the Roma people. So we were segregated. We were not allowed to go to public school. I remember as a little girl looking outside the orphanage window, I wasn't able to go to school.
You're joking.
No.
How would they looked at you and they said, you're definitely.
No, I don't look like a Bulgarian.
Okay. But like if
citizen.
you were.
If you travel to Europe, you would be able to look and say, okay, Roma descent, European descent, Spanish descent.
And it'd be clear.
Eastern European descent, very much so.
Okay, maybe I'm so used to seeing so many different shades of people and types of people that it just blends together for me. But there, it's very what's the word? Well, it's easy to separate them. I guess
it's easy
distinct.
in the sense of this was back in the 80s when I was born. Okay, 1987. Bulgaria is still part of USSR during that time.
Oh, I guess it was, wasn't it?
It was.
Huh.
So in 1991. When everything finally started opening in Eastern Europe, Bulgaria is one of those countries. So you had the old Yugoslavia region that started opening up, Moldova. Goodness, I'm probably forgetting the rest of them. But that looked different. When Reagan said, Gorbachev, tear down that wall, that wasn't very long ago in regards to history.
Right. It kind of startles me now. I'm like, dang, that was not long ago.
This is 2-3 generations. I mean, it's not very far removed from us, right? 2 generations. So that's, I came to the U.S. 94, 95. So think about our civil rights history. Martin Luther King, right?
Right.
1950s, 1960s, going into the 1970s is when they start integrating more of the public schools with colored, with Caucasian students. Bulgaria was just a little bit further behind, right? So a lot of countries have their own ugly history, just like the U.S. has had their trials. Bulgaria, same thing when it came to race.
Right. Do you remember feeling sad, though, when you would look through the window? And
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, in the orphanage, it was very well known. You were Roma. You were special needs versus the Caucasian, true Bulgarian race. So, yeah, I mean, it wasn't easy.
so how did you wind up coming then to the United States? And what was that experience like? What was the culture switch? Because it was a massive one, I would assume.
A massive one. I didn't speak English, clearly, right? So I spoke Bulgarian. My dad was working for the city of Portland, Oregon at the time. And he was in charge of doing like international shipping routes, doing the logistics.
Keep talking. I'm just going to do something real quick.
Yeah, with a company. And basically he heard a local news story come through his TV. There was this young American girl that was studying in England. She went to Eastern Europe in the late 80s, early 90s, and wanted to see what it was like. She is like 19 or 20 years old. Her name's Heather Radu. Heather basically started seeing all this devastation. She could not believe the difference between East and West Europe. She calls her parents in Portland, Oregon, and says, "I'm done going to school." Mm-hmm. She stops going to the Bible college she was going to in England, and said, "There's all these orphans, all these kids that have been abandoned. We've got to do something." Through that, they basically said yes. They started an organization in their living room to bring resource relief aid to orphans in Eastern Europe. Through that, they started the adoption agency as well, where they saw all these kids needed homes. She adopted her little sister Hannah from Romania, and that started the process. My dad heard that story. They were looking for donations. They were wanting to send out a boat with medical supplies. So he basically says, "I will volunteer. I actually work for the Port of Portland. We could probably figure out the logistics and donate a container for you with medical relief supplies," because there was people willing to help on the ground. They just didn't have access to the supplies. They were literally cut off from the world when it came to the economic structure. So they ended up delivering supplies. And so through that, they asked, "Hey, do you want to be part of this organization?" He clearly then saw a need. His eyes were open as they saw photos, and my mom and him were able to have another child. So then they thought, well, maybe it's more than just helping with the ship routes. Maybe it's also adoption. So then they decided to adopt me, and then that's kind of how it started with their adoption journey.
And then, so what do you remember about getting the news? If you can remember,
Yeah.
Again, 8 years old, you can remember things when you're 8. And again, you're
Yeah.
not that old, so it shouldn't be too hard. But what do you remember about hearing the news that, hey, someone wants you? And then how'd you come to the United States? First impressions,
Yeah.
What do you remember?
Yeah, I honestly didn't want to come to the States, right? Because I didn't know what the United States was. What I was told about the United States was a land where it was very rich. There was gold. Like you want to be there. And I, as a child, 8-year-old, I don't know. But I cried when I was picked up from the orphanage to go to the United States to go on my first plane ride. What I didn't know, I was scared, right?
Sure.
Now I've meeting people that don't speak Bulgarian, right? They're speaking English to me. I'm traveling through airports.
Oh my gosh, sensory overload. Everything's changing. It sounds like a nightmare, really.
I mean, imagine one day you're sleeping in your orphanage bed. You wake up and the next day and you're in a foreign country, foreign land, don't recognize a single soul, don't speak the language. Who do you go to?
I remember. So I real quick, I have 3 cousins that were adopted from China, and they're great. And I remember my uncle my aunt and uncle, they went and picked one up, and she fought like for her life to not go. And they're like, what do we do? And eventually she somehow communicated that she at least wanted like someone to come with her. And so they adopted 2. And then somehow they adopted my other cousin, Katie. And I don't know when that happened, but it's like, she was like fighting for her life to not leave. It's like, what? They're going to America. But that's, I guess I took for granted how scary that would be for a child.
Well, and an 8-year-old clearly knows what is happening, right? They're able to form their sentence. They know what they're thinking. They know how they're feeling. Taking a baby, it's a lot easier transition. And oftentimes babies are most desirable in adoptions.
Oh, yeah.
And they're cuter. I mean, come on. So yeah, imagine now you being 8 years old, you're totally being picked up from your home, totally being removed, placed in Kenya, and now you're speaking Swahili. Everyone's speaking Swahili to you.
Oh my gosh.
And you don't recognize a single soul if you were to have an emergency or have an issue.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
So kind of put it through that perspective for an 8-year-old.
Well, what do you remember then? When did you start to understand that, or when, if you ever did, when did you start to understand that this place it wasn't so bad?
Yeah, I mean, it took probably not very long, right? Your brain, your body does amazing stuff when it comes to survival mode. The way your brain can navigate and immerse itself in a new environment is incredible.
Especially at 8 years old. It's just, it's like clay,
Yes. And that's what happened, right? I started speaking English within the first 6 months, lost my Bulgarian, and I don't even remember Bulgarian.
You can't say a sentence?
Not a sentence, nothing.
Oh.
So, but look, that would have been considered my primary, my native language, right? Because that was the first tongue I learned. Can't remember anything.
Man, it just goes to show how plastic the human brain is at young ages,
Well, and that's what's really cool about the human brain, because it does, some would say it provides healing during that time, like restoration, right? Because it's able to figure out, how do I now survive in this new environment? What do I need to know to be successful? So it was some kids that I knew that was adopted from that same orphanage came to families in the Northwest. There were some Seattle adoptions, Portland. And so I knew those kids had already come to the U.S. So what was really neat about those families is when I came to the airport in Portland, when I arrived, those same kids I was in the same orphanage with, they were there to greet me. So that was really cool. So those families made it their purpose, made it their goal to keep those connections. So it was a familiarity to it. But yeah, so it was nice, right? I get off the plane and then I do see faces. I'm like, oh, that's Lainey, or that's Kelsey, that's Diana, that I had just seen in the orphanage months ago or a year prior to that, but they had just gone home before I did.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it would have had to have been such a relief to see some familiar faces when you do show up in this foreign land, practically a different world. For all intents and purposes, it was a different world for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I want to ask a little more about what it was like to grow up in Oregon and what your family life was like. And then I want to ask about politics, of course.
Yes.
I mean, for Pete's sake, you're running for state senate. And all of that in just 1 second. But first, I got to give a quick shout out to a wonderful local sponsor that is Dave's Supermarket. Have you ever been to Dave's before?
You know what? I haven't. I've seen them when I've gone into Fairbury. I need to stop probably.
If you want to win this election, you're going to have to stop by Dave. If you want the trust from these people, Dave's Supermarket is, that is...
I wish they were in my district.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We're going to talk about districts because that's an interesting thing. But
yeah.
Anyway, here's a quick word from Dave's Supermarket. Since 1950, Dave's Supermarket in Fairbury has been wowing customers throughout central Illinois with their unmatched customer service, delectable deli market, beloved grocery carryout service, and many other fortes, which is why they've earned hundreds of 5-star reviews online. Dave's 3rd Street Deli has plenty of seating and is a destination place to meet your family and friends for good food, fun, and fellowship. Not only is their home-style fried chicken here the best around, but you can also enjoy free coffee and 50-cent ice cream every single day. And be sure to check out their Old World Bakery while you're here, where freshly baked goods are prepared every morning. You'll find hundreds of unique and signature items here at Dave's that you won't find anywhere else, like their famous potato salad, ham loaf, and canned meats, just to name a few. Dave's Supermarket is open Monday through Saturday from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. and offers online shopping and curbside services. Come experience this revered location that puts the super in supermarket when you shop at Dave's in Fairbury, Illinois, wowing the customer for over 70 years. All right, that was Dave's Supermarket in Fairbury, Illinois. Desi is going to be sure to visit them very soon. As I said before we left, I want to know more about your upbringing in Oregon. What was your family life like? Were you middle class, upper class, lower class? What do you think?
Yeah, we average middle class family. Both parents worked. We did the traditional sports. Went to public school. I don't think there was anything too exciting in that sense. Typical family in the Northwest.
Mm-hmm. And were your parents, not that this matters, I hate to be this guy, but were you white family or?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So I was the only family, the only one that was brown in my family. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Interesting. And how many siblings did you have?
So a brother and then a younger sister, and then I'm in the middle.
Did you ever feel weird having been adopted? Since you were 8 years old, you weren't just born into the family.
Yeah, sometimes I struggled with it. Yeah, I think, as you get older, I think everyone starts asking more of those deep questions, right? About life and what this means and what am I, sometimes I would get teased by my brother and say, oh, I wish we never brought you home. And then,
what a heck of a teasing.
But
I wish we'd never.
But during that time as a kid, you're like, whatever. And then, but as you get older, you're like, okay, I don't know if that was stuff you should say. And
we say crazy things to our siblings, though.
We do.
I can remember saying the harshest things and not thinking anything of it.
And then as you get older, you're like, probably should have not. But right, as a kid, you've got one filter, and it's the kid filter, right? You're not paying attention of what the heck. Is usually going on. So I basically was there for, about 10 years or so, because after high school, I didn't go to college. I ended up going straight into a missions organization called YWAM, Youth with a Mission.
Oh my gosh. I know a girl named Kaylee Cotter from Pontiac, Illinois, who always says YWAM. It's an acronym, by the way. And I'm like, what is YWAM? And she's talked about it, but anyway,
Youth with a Mission?
Okay.
So they would claim they're one of the longest youth sending missions organization out in the world, which they probably are. I haven't done my research, but they've been around for a long time. The Cunninghams started it, I believe in Hawaii. But basically they have what they call a DTS, Discipleship Training School. And they've got bases, is what they call them, all throughout the U.S. and throughout the world, international bases. And basically you use Christian-based curriculums. You'll have guest speakers come in. Oftentimes it's maybe books they've wrote or literature that their friends wrote or whatever. And there's different topics, right? Like talking to God, week 1, what is the Holy Spirit or whatever. And you're doing for 6 months about an in-depth Bible reading, getting to know the Word and these various topics that are given to you. Those classes, those topics should equip you then to go to the mission field. What is a mission field, right? That's a great question. Is a mission field in my backyard? Yes. Is it in Uganda? Yes. Right?
Anywhere where conversion or what's the word? Proselytizing, spreading the gospel, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Where that's being done is the mission field.
That's right. So our group was assigned to go over to Uganda and Sudan. So after doing the 6 months DTS base in Oregon, I went to Uganda and Sudan there was like a group of 6 of us. And that was really my first exposure back to the international scene after I was adopted. And so during that time, we worked with 8 orphans, worked on projects, whatever was needed to be done. And then we went up to Sudan. And Sudan during that time, you might remember a thing called the Darfur Genocide.
I actually do not know what that is. But really quick, I did bring up a map of here, just so people know. Here's Uganda. Uganda's right there. It's right next to Kenya. For people that aren't watching, next to Ethiopia. And then there's big old Sudan right above it.
Yeah, so Sudan actually separated. So now it's North Sudan and Southern Sudan. And Juba, which you'll see in Southern Sudan, is the capital now. Right there. Yep. So that's where we were at. So we actually ended up walking kind of across the border. And we did some volunteer time with the United Nations. The group of us. And basically I came across one of their field organizer and said, is there a need for volunteers? And they're like, I said, well, you've got 6 healthy, willing bodies. So we worked at an IDP camp.
What's that?
IDP camp is called internal displacement of people. In time of war, like look at Ukraine, for example. When people have to uproot and leave their home and settle to a different city within their home country, they're called IDPs. A refugee status is actually when they leave their home country borders. You don't get refugee status until you leave the borders.
Makes sense.
So internal IDP is, there was the genocide up in Darfur, so the UN peacekeepers were flying up north, filling commercial planes with this particular Muslim tribe, flying them down to the south while they were trying to reestablish safety and security for them to go back up north eventually where they could resettle. But during that time of war, they basically lived in IDP camps. It's those white tents, if you ever look at like war images. So we were helping with the UN, and they were doing different curriculums. So they would be teaching them health, sanitation, cooking, financial saving. So we would be in charge of doing like health. So we would get information, and it's basic stuff that you probably wouldn't think about. But it's like when you build your latrine. Do you know what a latrine is?
Is that something to do with the bathroom?
Yeah, like the hole that you would dig to go to the bathroom. You don't have it next to your living space, your mud hut in this area. You actually designate a whole different mud hut that you enclose so that you could keep the germs and the bacteria away from it. A lot of folks wouldn't know, and they would put their latrine right next to their kitchen space.
Because you don't know until you know. Sure.
Right. So like the safety, sanitation, and we would work with the Arabic, with an Arabic translator, and then it would get translated to their local tongue. And I would just go basically tent to tent and visit with those folks.
And one more time. So you were in the country of Uganda for this. And
so this was actually in Sudan. So Uganda,
okay,
we just worked with the HIV/AIDS orphans. And then we went up north to Sudan, where we heard there was a need, and worked there for a lot of our times.
HIV/AIDS orphans. Mm-hmm. Did the orphans have HIVs or AIDS?
Yep.
How old were they?
So you'd be from newborn to 6, 7, 8, 9, depending how well their body could fight the virus.
So did you see a lot of child death there?
We not necessarily know. Our time frame was 4 months.
Okay.
We spent about 3 or 4 weeks in Uganda, and then a lot of the time.
So you weren't around long enough, I guess.
No. So, but we would help with the charts. So we would go to like an HIV clinic or a clinic, but mainly most people would know they could get there, they could get testing, and we would just jot it down and be like, okay, this girl's got HIV. We would chart it, and then we would send them to the doctors, and then there was a British doctor that was volunteering her time there, and I can't remember her name. But she would be working as a travel doctor and kind of go to different clinics and provide her resource and her knowledge to infectious diseases.
And so these kids were never, the kids that you worked with, they didn't get AIDS by way of sexually transmitted, in the sexually transmitted disease form. It wasn't transmitted sexually. It was passed down from their parents who had it.
I would assume so. Now we don't ask. Whoever brings them in, how they received it. A lot of the times it would have been being passed down through the mom when she would be delivering. But who knows? Could that child been a victim of a sexual assault? Maybe.
Sure.
Right? So, that wasn't necessarily the purpose of us. We were just charting. I mean, we're 18 and 19 years old.
You had a role, and you were fulfilling that role, right?
Yeah.
You were charting. So that makes sense. And so you were in Sudan for... remind me what you were doing again. You said there was a genocide, and you were helping a certain demographic of Muslim people?
So we were working with the UN, just volunteer.
Okay.
And the UN were sending UN peacekeepers up to the north, bringing a Muslim group down to these IDP camps for safety.
And safety from what?
From there, I forgot the name. I didn't realize I was going to be talking about.
It's all good, but these were Muslim people. It's like
so
Muslims.
It was. I can't remember the presidents during that time, but look into the Darfur Genocide, and that will give you some info.
Okay, well, let's look it up right now. Darfur Genocide. The Darfur Genocide is a systematic killing of ethnic Darfuri people, which has occurred during the ongoing conflict in Western Sudan. It has become known as the first genocide of the 21st century, the genocide which is being carried out against the Fur, Masalit, and Zagawa tribes has led to something, but they're... So what, the northern Sudan president was ordering the genocide, the killing of these people?
Right, to get rid of this ethnic group. So just like what you would see in Nazi Germany, basically a genocide is trying to eliminate an ethnic group socially, culturally, economically, whatever it may be. So they got displaced.
That's incredible. Wow. And you were helping these people that were fleeing for their lives.
Well, I don't know how much help it was the UN. We were under that agency. I mean, we were doing very basic, low totem pole. But definitely what that did, though, as an 18 and 19-year-old, that opens your eyes to to the world. And that's when I spent my first Christmas away from home. I was in Sudan. We weren't thinking about gifts, right? And the presents we were going to open up, like most of my friends were back home. They were getting excited. That's when the iPods started coming out, So
This is early 2000s?
So, no, mid 2000s.
Okay.
So during that time, 5 or 6 of us ended up getting malaria and getting very sick. I was one of them. So during that time, I was worried more about my health. So Africa was hard. When I say Africa was hard, it was emotionally, physically, mentally. It was not easy. And I can't imagine being there all the, like 24/7 because of the conditions. I mean, it is heart-wrenching. We would walk miles to get fresh water from a well that was put in by an organization. Not having the resources when you have malaria. So I ended up getting West Nile virus and malaria. So I ended up going back down into Uganda with our team so we could get medical treatment.
What were the side effects of that?
High fever, weak body. One of the ways they could look is your eyes, if they started turning like a yellow-ish. If you ever look at photos of just the beautiful, beautiful kiddos in Africa, if you see like a yellow tint color in their eye, they've got malaria. And that's one of the ways they would look for signs, for symptoms. Is
it like super debilitating, or is it?
I mean, people can die from malaria, right? And most kids, if you don't have the treatment.
Here's one of the eyes I found online.
See that?
Not a great picture, but yeah, it's definitely yellow.
So you're learning so much today.
I know. Yes, I am, for sure. It's nice to have this laptop right next to me.
I know it.
So was your life a living hell or anything with these diseases? Or
I mean, it's hard. I mean, it's one of the scariest things is being a mom, and imagine your 6-month-old baby getting malaria. The survival rate, very difficult if you don't have access to treatment. And we were doing the right thing. We were taking our anti-malaria pill, but ours was outdated, ironically, in that region. So the malaria virus is kind of like the flu. It mutates and changes. And so if you don't have the updated medication, that drug isn't going to work if the virus has mutated so much. So that's what happened with my group is we were trying to take all the safety measures, protocols, but it didn't matter because that medication was never going to be strong enough for that mutated version of that.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Dang.
So
how'd you get better, and what happened when you got better?
So I took some type of a malaria treatment. Honestly, I don't even remember. I was running like 105 fevers for like a couple days, multiple days.
That's like brain damage level.
Yes. So very high. So when you get malaria, you usually know like you're down, and it's usually just weaky and fevers.
I would have to imagine that the facilities you were staying in, like the hospital, weren't exactly on.
Oh no. So I walked to a clinic and they handed me a razor blade. I had to cut myself with a razor blade with 105 degree, and to get enough blood on the little slide so they could put it underneath the microscope to test it.
Whoa. Interesting.
And then I was walking to the hospital for a morning shot and an evening shot for my malaria, running 105 degrees fever. I mean, talk about how weak I was feeling, right? And then my malaria symptoms weren't going away. Found out the shot treatment I was getting didn't work for my body. My body was rejecting that for some reason, and I did a different treatment and got better.
Wow. It's just kind of crazy. They gave you, it sounds like what I did in my 8th grade science class with Mr. Maley. I mean, I just, you you scrape the inside of your mouth, you put it under a microscope and look at it and say, oh, cool, there's
Right.
this thing. And we could have easily just gone scrape, get some blood. I think I might have put my own blood on a slide once.
Did
looked
you?
at it. Yeah. And it's just
You
like,
would have
wow.
fit right into Africa because that's what you would do. You just line up.
Dang. Okay, well, I want to ask you more about, what it was like to come back to America, if your experience in Africa changed your ideas of America, maybe even the American dream and stuff like that. But before we do that, I got to give another quick thank you to a wonderful local sponsor. That's Fairbury Furniture, Central Illinois' premier furniture store. Here's a quick word from them. Fairbury Furniture is Central Illinois' premier furniture store. This family-owned business offers a vast selection of premium furniture items from all of your favorite brands, including Sealy, Best Home Furnishings, Leather Italia, Tempur-Pedic, and Ashley, just to name a few. And right next door to their gorgeous 7,000 square foot furniture showroom, you will find the Fairbury Furniture Mattress Store, home to all of the latest and greatest mattresses in any and all sizes. Also inside Fairbury Furniture is the popular WC Market, a beloved shop that offers an ever-changing selection of unique gifts and fashionable home decor. Here at Fairbury Furniture, the staff is always helpful and friendly, and they are well stocked with all the mattresses, tables, chairs, recliners, couches, and decorative pillows that your heart desires. So make your home interior beautiful, comfortable, stylish, and delightful when you shop at Fairbury's own Fairbury Furniture.
Come on down to Fairbury Furniture, where the furniture rocks.
All right, that was Fairbury Furniture, Central Illinois' premier furniture store. Speaking of, businesses and entrepreneurship and things like that, what do you believe about the American dream? Granted, given where you came from, Bulgaria, given the fact that you went to Africa and you experienced again what a country that is like the polar opposite from the United States is like. What do you believe about the American dream, and maybe what even is the American dream?
I don't know what the American dream is. It looks so different for everybody. But what I do know is after I spent time in Africa, I still was in the nonprofit sector. I ended up, ironically, going back to Portland, Oregon, and working for the same adoption agency that adopted me.
Wow.
Talk about a full circle moment in life,
Yeah.
right? They ended up having an opportunity. They had a program in Guatemala where they had a private home. The social welfare system in Guatemala would heavily relied on the private sector to step up. So there wasn't state orphanages. All the orphanages were ran through private organizations. This organization would basically, when they would help families adopt with their forever child, often those families would donate money to that orphanage for kids that were left behind that were never adopted. Well, in 2007, 2010, no, it would have been 2007. International adoption stopped in Guatemala.
Weird. They're like, no more will our kids be leaving.
So
They still had orphans, right? And they're just like,
yeah.
they're not
So
leaving.
unfortunately, oftentimes you've got the ugly side of adoption in the sense of there were some kids that probably weren't ever truly orphaned, and they got sold, trafficked into a system. And there would be times where parents actually would go to an orphanage and say, for $5,000, I'm going to sell my child. Now, that's against the law, but rumor has it there was some private lawyers and adoption agencies that would operate that way. Some were even said they had hired people to kill mom and dad so they could kidnap the child.
My gosh.
So it got ugly, and that's why a lot of people don't like international adoptions, because it's expensive.
So can I just to clarify, you kidnap a kid in Guatemala, and then you have a place maybe pay $5,000 for this kid. They said, we'll take him. And then how much would they sell him for?
So they wouldn't.
They were literally selling, weren't they?
They were selling them. Now, the question is, did that adoption agency knew how that child became abandoned? right? So you would have to start peeling off the layers and figure out who knew what, who was connected to the scheme. And basically it got out of control in Guatemala, where they had to close because of human right issues and human right violations.
But this is how it would work. They would, people would
So it would
kidnap
often not be necessarily adoption agency. It was the private lawyers, right? So the private lawyers would be working within the black market, I call it. And they would hire gangbangers. They would go to a house where they knew there was a newborn baby. They would murder the parents and kidnap the baby, give that baby to another individual and say, hey, this baby's abandoned. Lie on how the baby became abandoned, right? Well, the only placement you could leave an abandoned baby was an orphanage at that time. And that was done by the private sector. Now, you would still have your traditional court proceeding process for the abandonment of the child. Clearly, mom and dad are out of the picture, right? So now their voice is gone because they were murdered. So basically, there was too many red flags and too many issues where private lawyers that were Guatemalans, some Americans got in trouble.
Right. Well, okay. And I apologize.
Yeah.
I keep having to. So they would, though, at the end of the day, this kid would go to the adoption center, and the person who made that happen would get a kickback, like $5,000.
Right.
And then parents, say from the United States, to come adopt that kid would pay $10,000 maybe.
Right.
So
and
it's profit.
Well, so that $10,000 actually is going to legal proceedings. That is based on Guatemala legal court system for your court cases. The attorney you have to hire from the U.S. State Department. There's fees from the U.S. State Department to get naturalized citizenship for that child. So you've got multiple government agencies having their hand in all of this.
Right.
So that's where it adds up.
Well, okay, I get that. But how are these people that were ordering for the murder of these parents and kidnapping the kid, how were they making money?
So that lawyer had his own scheme set up to get that child. It was a Guatemalan lawyer, oftentimes. That Guatemalan lawyer basically hired actors, right? So you take a gang member, you tell him, hey, I'm going to pay you $5,000. Your job is to murder these people. He introduces another character that finds the baby. That character brings it into the orphanage and said, hey, we found this baby abandoned. Okay. The orphanage then legally starts the legal proceeding and trying to find biological family. What ends up happening is they find out, oh, mom and dad were murdered. They don't know how. Guatemala is known for their violence. It's not a safe city. And they would target low-income families that lived in the ghetto where there's high crime.
And just say it's another one.
It's another crime, right? Another unsolved homicide. Maybe someone got caught up in crossfire. Who knows? But that lawyer would know, right? But the adoption agency, some of them knew. Some of them were probably working within that with that Guatemalan lawyer. I would say a lot of the adoption agency that were U.S. based and European based didn't know necessarily the background of those kiddos.
Right. And was a Guatemalan lawyer in this scenario? Is he working with the American family or something?
He would be working with the adoption agencies within Guatemala, so those orphanages. They're not state. So remember,
I'm starting to get it now. Okay.
Guatemala doesn't have state orphanages. They do now. After they closed international adoptions, they were forced to create their own infrastructure. But the burden became on the private sector, which was the adoption agencies that were running the orphanages as well.
I get it. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, and so the lawyer's making money because a lot of the money that the American family will have to pay in the adoption is going to him for legal proceedings. You might have said it 3 times, but now I get it.
Yeah, so
well.
it was a weird...
Okay.
It was definitely a scheme, right? Like
yes.
You had to really peel the layers to just like anything in the black market, right? They don't want you to find it. So that's what was happening. So the sad thing was you did have great organizations and great orphanages that were truly following the law and were doing things correctly. But you can have one bad apple spoil it for everybody, right?
Right.
So this orphanage, through the adoption agency that was adopted, was looking for alternative ways. How do we keep this orphanage open still? We no longer are having families donate it through the adoption process. What's a way to do it? So they changed their names, and all they started focusing was on mission trips. So I created a missions program where churches from the U.S. and Canada could come down for the week, spend time with kiddos, and do community projects. So I would create a schedule and take them to the ghettos. We would build a house, go to the dump, and say, hey, a lot of these kids, where they're coming from, they came from communities like this. This is why it's important that we keep our doors open still on the private sector in Guatemala to make sure these kids are still taken care of, because they were truly abandoned. Mom and dad are never coming back for them, or mom and dad fully lost their parental rights because abuse in the home.
So how'd you go from there? How'd you end up coming to Illinois? I know it's
so I spent almost 5 years in Guatemala.
Jeez, man. How long did you spend in Africa again?
Like 3 to 4 months.
Okay.
So my longest stint was in Central America.
Right. Where you learned Spanish.
Sí se puede. Puedo hablar español. Un poquito, pero...
Muy bueno.
Gracias.
Necesito practicar mi español porque mi español es más o menos. That's all I got.
Yo también. La cosa para mí es los cosas gramática.
Okay.
I was working with the non-educated, right? I mean, I taught myself Spanish. I never got a book out and studied, congregate this, and no. A lot of people too thought I was Hispanic. So
I could see that.
There was no mercy for me, right? And I would go to the grocery store, and there would be like Pats there, working expats or whatever, going grocery shopping, or a tourist, and clearly they look like a tourist. And they're like, hola, morena, ¿cómo estás? And I'm like, ooh. So one thing, funny story, when I went grocery shopping for the first time, I was trying to buy avocados.
They probably had plenty for a good price in Central America.
They did. So I'm in the mercado, and I'm walking around, and I'm like, man, I can't find the avocados. Well, me being an ignorant American, I thought avocado was the Spanish word for avocado. So I go to this lady comes up to me, and she's talking to me in Spanish, and I'm assuming she's asking me, can I help you find something? I said, avocado. No, avocado. Like, and so I'm trying to think of maybe if I say guacamole. So I said guacamole, and she said, and I'm like, and then I think she realized, okay, she's not Hispanic. She clearly is a tourist. So she took me to kind of where she thought avocados would be, and they were there. She holds it up and says, aguacate. She says, aguacate. I was like, oh. First lesson right there in Guatemala. I guess avocados are not the Spanish word for avocados. They're aguacates.
Aguacates.
Did you know that?
No, I had no idea. But it's a valuable lesson for everyone.
So who decided to name aguacates avocados when we don't grow them in the U.S.? Why would we not kept them aguacates?
Too hard to say the tes at the end, maybe some lazy Americans, who knows? So
avocados and aguacates are the same thing, just a different word.
Very good. Hey, that's interesting stuff.
A little Spanish of the day for you. Maybe we'll do that on Fridays for the Paul Garcia show.
Yeah, I should know more Spanish. My name's freaking Paul Lorenzo Garcia. I should know. Mexican grandparents. No kidding. Okay.
So after Guatemala, you're like, how did you get to Illinois?
Correct.
I'm now like 26, I believe. I'm exhausted. Working overseas, it's hard. It's draining emotionally when you're in that nonprofit sector and you're constantly seeing a need in front of you and you're not making money. You're losing money. I took whatever I had, every paycheck I had, I was giving from this organization. I was just giving back to the community. I had literally zero in my account. I came back to the States, actually went to Indiana first, and living was cheaper there, kind of wanted to do my own thing. I knew some friends that had come down on mission trips that I was doing. So I had gotten to know a lot of people in the Midwest, which was cool. And they're like, hey, why don't you come to the Midwest? I'm like, I've never been to the Midwest. And spent a year just kind of recapping what just happened in the last 7 years of my life after high school. And I would see on Facebook, everyone did the traditional college, started dating people, got married, started having kids.
It's like, hey, I was sacrificing my time for the well-being of these people in need.
I was living overseas, right?
Yeah.
So I lost a lot of those connections and those relationships because they weren't in Guatemala working in the ghetto.
It's a downside of doing that type of thing, I feel like. It's
sacrificial, and that's some of the stuff you sacrifice along the way, and I wouldn't change it for the world. So I basically came back to Indiana. I was living in a family's basement. Or not basement, but their guest bedroom for a whole year. And I just was saving money. And I was working odd end jobs. I was hustling. Working at a Mexican restaurant, bartending, you name it, I was doing it, right?
Yeah.
And so I did that. And
while going to Indiana University?
No, I was not. I was just working at the time, saving money because I had literally nothing to my account. I had moved from Guatemala with just a suitcase, and that's all I had owned that was in my name. So I had nothing, no money, and just my suitcase. And did those jobs. A year later, now I'm a believer. I'm a Christian. I had enrolled to go to school at Vincennes University in Vincennes, in Indiana. It's not small, it's pretty big. It was the first state university in Indiana. But I was just going to do some associate undergrad classes because I had never been to college yet. And ended up knowing people in Bloomington, Illinois, ironically.
And you're in Bloomington. It's not.
I'm in
Indiana.
Princeton, Indiana at this time. But they ended up having a connection of possibly being a congressional intern. Because I kind of liked politics. I might do this. Okay. And I end up going that next year, going to be a congressional intern for Congressman Aaron Schock. Do you know anything about Congressman Aaron Schock?
No. Is he in Indiana or Illinois?
He was Illinois. He ended up resigning. He was the next up-and-coming Republican star. Found himself in hot water with some... I don't know.
Well, just some controversial thing.
Controversial stuff, right.
Okay. Are you scared to say it?
No, it's I don't want to speak if I don't know the full story.
Understood. Okay.
Okay. I never want to assume what I read in the paper is always accurate. Whatever I see in social media is always accurate, right? Because that's always going to be the perspective from that journalist.
Right.
It's not me ever having those conversations. And he was a public figure, and I don't want to, because I don't know the story.
Okay. But you worked for him anyway.
No, I didn't.
Oh, sorry.
So I show up to D.C. thinking I'm going to be being an intern for him. He ended up resigning the day I showed up to D.C. And I'm thinking, shoot. Well, I subleased my apartment. I thought I was going to be out here for 3 to 4 months. Now I have no internship. What am I going to do? And I have my car loaded. So for 2 weeks, I walked up and down the halls of Congress asking other offices, hey, have you filled your need for interns? I was supposed to be Aaron Schock's intern. Clearly it hasn't worked out. And I ended up getting into Congressman Rodney Davis' office.
Okay, another guy from Illinois.
He's from Illinois, the 13th district at the time. Now the redistricting has him in the 15th district. But his office was super kind and extended their invitation and brought me in to their team. And I was able to work with their summer interns. And it was great. And then the next, after that year, I finished up at Vincent's. I did 2 years at Vincent's University, and I applied for IU. And I got accepted to IU and graduated in 2019. So I was like 31 at the time. Right? 31. With a double major in political science and religious studies, looking at 16 century church history. So
Right on.
that, and then 2019, I got married that same summer.
Where'd you meet your husband? Give him a shout out.
Shout out, Nicholas. We met through a mutual friend. He was living in Bloomington, Illinois at the time. I was living in Princeton, Indiana. He came on a golf trip with a couple of buddies that went to golf in southern Indiana, and I met his buddies. He was there at dinner, and he did these smooth, let me send this girl a Facebook message, my number, and he did. We started talking, and we dated long distance, and then got married, then bought our property in 2019 as well.
Your property meaning the Hayworth, yes, the Hesed House Venue.
So
beautiful place. I've been there. Love it.
Yeah, you were a guest. Mm-hmm. 55 acres. And we just finished a building this past year. So coming back, I know this is long-winded, coming back to what the American dream is the American dream having a small business, raising a family? Or is it being able to take my resources and talents and get back to other parts of the world? And I'm using the American dream structure for that, right? The knowledge and the power and the resources I was given in America, I was able to use that for almost 10 years in the nonprofit sector before getting my degree at age 31.
Nice.
Right?
Awesome.
So what is it? And traditionally, we know the American dream as first-generation immigrant, moving here, establishing wealth of some sort, right? What do we view wealth as? Owning your own home, owning land, possibly owning a business, having the ability to put your kids maybe in private school. So, for me, I view it, the minute my feet hit American soil, I was living the American dream. Mm-hmm. As I lived all over and traveled all over the world, the freedoms that we have bears nothing like the rest of the world. It just doesn't. Mm-hmm. The ability for you to take your talents and do whatever you want and grow whatever way you want and shape yourself can only happen in America. You can't do that anywhere else in the world.
Immediately, people are going to say places: Finland, Sweden, Canada. What do you think?
So have you talked to them? How much are they paying in the socialism?
Oh, yeah, right? Like those Sweden, Finland areas. Yeah, it's like...
It's all socialism. They're paying into the government, right? So their paycheck... Now, people can say we've got parts of that when we're paying into the IRS with our taxes.
Aspects of socialism.
There's aspects. But... And there's some people that love socialism. I don't want that same care. I don't want the same generic care that you get in Norway, Sweden,
whether you know it or not, you don't want that, right?
Right.
Go try to get important surgery in Canada, right? You're going to be put on a waiting list, and it's going to be a bad surgery.
Right. Mm-hmm. So in the U.S., we don't have that, right? You've got the open market. You've got, if I don't like this quote from this insurance agent, now I'm legally required to have car insurance. I'm not told at least what company I have to go through, right? I have the ability to go on the market and figure out who's got best pricing, who can give me the quote, who's more affordable, who's got what coverage, what benefits, da-da-da-da. Does Sweden and them operate like that? Do you have a more of an open market with some things? No. The U.S. does.
And the U.S. has better ones, better insurance providers, better doctors, better surgeries.
Well, it depends who you ask what's better.
Does really? Okay.
I mean, right, people's concept of better, you and I are going to have a different concept of what better is.
Right. I mean, quality, percentage-wise, their rate of satisfaction, I guess, would be a good indicator of, what is better. The rate of satisfaction, the quality of the job done across all industries, how well they insure something, how well they perform surgeries, what percentage of the time, yada, yada, yada. There's a lot of ways,
I mean, those are questions, that we get to ask in a society like this,
with free
right?
speech in a constitution and
well,
stuff,
we got to protect it, too.
I want to talk about that. I want to talk about protecting those rights, those incredibly valuable rights, know it or not, how incredibly powerful and important they are to protect. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the state of Illinois. It's about to get really good to everyone watching and listening. But first, I got to give a quick shout out to, speaking of the American Dream, a wonderful small business in Lexington, Illinois, that's Ultra Physical Therapy. You ever had like a knee injury or anything?
I haven't.
Oh, lucky you. Yeah, knock on wood here. If you do, though, I suggest you go to one place. That's Ultra Physical Therapy in Lexington, Illinois. Here's a quick word from them. Newsflash, no one likes being injured or being in pain. And if you're suffering from joint or muscle pain or recovering from a sports injury or a recent surgery, Ultra Physical Therapy in downtown Lexington, Illinois is here to help. They are a locally owned physical therapy company that can treat everyone from the star cheerleader to the farmer getting ready for harvest, to the professional office worker, to the grandmother who wants to be able to play with her grandchildren. The therapists at Ultra Physical Therapy have a combined 25 years of experience and are trained in cutting-edge interventions, including dry needling, blood flow restriction training, cupping, and the use of massage and joint manipulation. They are also skilled in developing exercise and rehabilitation programs to get you back to doing all the things that you love to do. So free yourself from those aches and pains that are slowing you down and give them a call at 309-365-2500 to schedule an appointment or just to ask questions.
Come to Ultra Physical Therapy in Lexington and we'll keep you moving.
All right, that's Ultra Physical Therapy in Lexington, Illinois. Great place. Okay, so I want to, again, we're already talking about politics a little bit. I want to ask you a little bit more about, well, maybe we could start with Illinois and what you're doing. What does a state senator do? Because you're running for the state senator of the 46th, right? Mm-hmm. 46th district of the state of Illinois. What does a senator in that position do?
Well, it's a great question. So, kind of back it up. I'm running for the 46th district, which encompasses parts of Bloomington, Normal, Woodford County, where Carlock's at, parts of Tazewell County, and Peoria and Bartonville.
Okay. And I really quick wanted to pull up what I had a thing here. Aha, here it is.
Is it the new updated map?
Illinois State Senate districts until January 10th, 2023. How's this look? We're looking at a district map here. Kind of wonky. It does not at all follow the, county map or anything. Here's Bloomington's right here. Okay, if I click this,
so
this
that
is 44.
is incorrect. That is not the right.
And here's 46.
That's not the correct map.
What? Okay, what if we go over here? Starting January 11th.
There you go. That is the one.
So this isn't yet. This isn't right now.
That is my district. So when people are voting for this election cycle, for those that live in that red area right there,
which is kind of a small area, but it encompasses Peoria.
So I've got all the universities: ISU, Illinois Wesleyan, ICC, Heartland, Bradley University. So the districts are basically divided up within the population. So there's going to be districts that are bigger geographically, but it should reflect the similar population.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So yes, my district geographically is one of the smallest ones in central Illinois. It might be the smallest one, actually. If you pull up your map, I'm actually curious. I think it is the smallest one in central Illinois. And then in Chicago, they get really small because Chicago is such a big... You see, look at Chicago.
Right.
See how they're just all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got the smallest one because I've got Peoria, Bloomington, Normal.
Mm-hmm.
Major cities within central Illinois is in my district. So each district will have 2 House districts as well. So the 91 House Rep district is in my area, and the 92. So it's kind of like what you see on the national level. You've got your Senate chamber and your House chamber, both working on legislation that should represent their constituents.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
that's what a state senator is. It's
How many districts are there for senators? Like, because you're in the 46th, how many are there total? Because I know there's how many congressional districts are there? Is that what these are? I'm kind of confused.
So you've got Senate and House, but that map looks like it's only the Senate.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I can't remember at the top of my head right now how many Senate districts there are. And why don't you Google that real quick?
Okay, let's see here. How many Senate districts are in Illinois?
Are they 60?
Okay. 59 senators.
59. Okay, there you go.
Okay.
I was going to say 60, but it's 59.
Got it. And then the Illinois House of Representatives is made up of 118 members.
Yeah, so each district was going to have those House reps that I was just telling you. Like, I've got the 91st and the 92nd in my Senate district.
Okay.
So you're going to have more House reps. Just like on the national level, you've got more members of Congress than Senate, U.S. Senates.
Because senators, does each state get 2?
2, that's right.
Right, but representatives is based off of population.
And when they do the districting of the maps, like Adam Kingsinger, for example, is a congressman from Illinois. With the redistricting of the map, his district basically was eliminated with the change of population, and they do those maps every 10 years with the census.
So are there 2 different kinds of districts in Illinois?
Yeah, so you'll have, you've got from your local district, right, your county.
Mm-hmm. McLean County, sure.
But in regards to state, you're looking at state district and House district.
Got it. Okay, so state district is that the one that we just looked at that there's 56 of?
59 of those.
59 of?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's
state.
So I've got the 46th.
Okay, a 56, and then you said
A 59.
59. Why did you
That's
say
okay.
56?
I was wanting to
59.
say 60, and I was off by 1. So
59 state districts, and what's the other district type?
our House rep.
House rep. Okay, and how many of those are there?
Those are the 118.
18 or something, was it?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, interesting. So when they did the redistricting, I think last year, was that were they redrawing the district lines for?
It's based off the census. So they're looking at their population, where people have moved, left. So like Chicago clearly saw people leave. Illinois saw a lot of people leave because of the taxes. They're taking their talents elsewhere.
Yeah.
So that's why they do it. They do it to make sure they have adequate representation for their constituents. So if one geographic area, say Bloomington grew or Normal grew overnight because of a company like Rivian, and you see all this growth, people coming from the east, west coast, and living here, those numbers, if they continue their growth, it will make Normal Bloomington bigger than what it is now.
What is gerrymandering?
So when you've got the upper hand, so the Democrats are clearly controlling Springfield, right? So they'll have their own committee where they get the majority say of what these new maps are going to look like. So if you look at my map, pull it up again.
What in the world did I exit? Here.
You didn't exit it, did you?
Let me see here. Illinois genocide. That's not it. Districting looks like another state. Huh. Oh, could this do? Is this the same thing?
I'm not sure what website you're
Here,
on.
I'll go history. Illinois, Sudan. Goodness gracious. Here, keep talking, though. For a second, I'll find it.
No, that's all right. So you've got a committee that basically, it looks like a child took a crayon and just started scribbling all over the place.
Right.
Where it doesn't make sense why you're removing some subdivisions in my areas and keeping others. So the gerrymandering part comes from, there was a guy named, goodness, this is going back to my college days.
Some dude named Michael Gerryander.
He basically was trying to make advantage of the new maps for his constituent, where his party would have the favor of the upper hand. Because, like I said, Adam Kingsinger's district got removed. He was a Republican. Where are all those Republicans? Whose district is that going to? That's one less Republican now you have voting in U.S. Congress on legislation.
And then do these districts need to have roughly similar population in them?
Yes, so that's why they do it, is because they want to make sure there is correct representation. That if there's an area where a lot of people have moved away or moved in or whatever, they want to make sure it represents, they have the correct legislative representation.
Okay, so it's like, hey, guys, here's a crayon. Circle 59 different spots on the Illinois map, and each one has to have roughly 500,000 people.
Whatever the number is. But what happens is when you've got like the Democrats right now that are in charge in Springfield, the guy that I'm running against is a Democrat. He's been he's going to be 74 on his next birthday. Career politician. He's been in politics longer than I've been alive.
What's his name?
Dave Kaler.
Dave Kaler. Okay.
He started out with Peoria City Council, then got nominated to the Senate, and has been in there, and is what I believe he's trying to do a few more years so he can get his 20-year retirement package from the General Assembly.
Huh. You get that after 20 years? You get a package?
you get. Of course you do. Welcome to Illinois.
That's weird. So they reward career politicians. They're like, thank you for doing this for so long.
Because it's a service. It's a public. They're public servants.
Huh.
But if you look the way he drew that, he drew in such a way where it's probably more in the Democratic favor. And what I mean by that is, like ISU, for example, is that a conservative university, Paul?
Oh, you're asking the wrong guy. I've heard bits and pieces of both sides, so.
Which is great, right? So if you have the surrounding neighborhoods, if you have just canvassed them or walked them, and I have, when I was collecting signatures, what I will say the trend is it's mostly Democratic.
Okay, as most universities are, right?
Correct.
Especially state-ran.
That's what I was trying to hint at.
Okay.
My district has all the universities. Now, that was clearly done on purpose for the advantage of the Democratic Party.
So they circled places, although the population remained the same, they wanted to circle as many.
Yeah, so if you look on the map, I purposely have, there's conservative subdivisions and neighborhoods in the Bloomington Normal area that are not in my district.
So like right here on the map, the top left of this square that encompasses most of Bloomington, like this could be Republican hub. Like
Yes.
there's tons of Republicans right here, tons of Republicans right here. And they're like, okay, well, don't give them any more representation than they need. Circle them both.
Yes.
And then maybe this here, like maybe right here is a wicked Democratic section, and they're like, let's circle them twice or something.
Sure. So whatever their method is, right? But the method of the gerrymandering is to give an advantage to that party that has majority during that time.
Okay.
Which, we're in Illinois, the Democrats have had the voice and say for a long time.
Uh-huh.
Right?
So they're trying to get as many representatives that are Democratic.
No, they're trying to make it difficult for a Republican to run in that district.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay.
Right? So
Yeah,
as,
so there'll be less
as a
Republican
Republican, goodness, it's going to look intimidating. Goodness, I've got all the universities. I've got this side of town. I've got that side of town. Do I even want to try? Right? And that's one way they try to have a non-challenger in the race. I mean, there's been years when Dave Kaler ran and he had no challenger. He was just the incumbent.
That had to feel good for him, though.
Well, right. It would feel good for any party, right?
Right.
So, and that's the purpose of gerrymandering. You can see it on both sides. Because I imagine if the Republicans were in it, they would do similar tactics, trying to get the upper hand when it comes. So that's what. So it is a new district this time around. Bloomington Normal were not part of the 46th district historically. It is a new territory that Dave Kaler will have to and will be forced to campaign in, that he typically would have not campaigned in the past. Which, now the nice thing is, my husband's from this area, born and raised. Clearly our business is not too far from the Bloomington Normal area. We're heavily invested with community engagement. We're actively involved. So it's great to have that advantage. I know this area. And then it's been exciting to get to know more parts of Woodford County, Tazewell County, Peoria, that I typically maybe wouldn't have gone out.
So you're running against Kaler, right? He's been doing this for a long time. You're in a heavily Democratic district. Do you think that you can win? I know you've had to do a lot of work. You had to get like 1,500 signatures and whatnot, or at least knock on 1,500 doors, according to your Facebook post.
Yeah, so I knocked on a lot of doors. We gathered over 1,300 signatures. Now, we didn't submit all 1,300. But I don't know if it's that heavily Democratic. When you're knocking on doors, those that are Democrats are saying, we miss the old Democratic JFK Democrats. Mm-hmm. That's the party they knew. It's gone too liberal for them, where they're struggling, right? They're the ones that like the policy of Donald Trump, but not the personality. Can they have a Joe Biden personality with a Trump policy is what they would love. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. I think there's more moderates than Republicans versus Democrat. This area is more purple versus red or blue.
Right. I think as the Democratic Party in Congress continues to go further left, they leave a lot of their loyal, more not neutral, but more towards the center Democrats, the more reasonable Democrats, as I would say, kind of, they leave them in the dust as they continue to go further left on the spectrum, it seems. Like, yeah. I was amazed when I found out my grandpa, Grandpa John Reese, was, I mean, he's a devout Catholic. He's a conservative man. And I was amazed to only recently find out that in his like early 30s, 40s, 50s. He was the head of the Democratic Party in Fairbury in like Livingston County. I'm like, wait, time out. It's like, well, and I asked my grandma about it, and she said the Democratic Party was way different then than what it is now. You could actually be a Catholic or a devout Christian and be Democratic, and it wasn't a contradiction, and that's just hardly the case now, it seems.
Right, because if you look at one of the Catholic issues is pro-life.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Right? Uh-huh. But that doesn't reflect the Democrat Party.
Right. Somehow Joe Biden says he's Catholic too, which is, it's like,
hey, I'm not. I know what I practice. I'm going to stick with that. I can't judge him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was a jerk there. Don't you worry.
No. I'm telling you, can't do this to me. I already told you this before we went on air.
What? Because I'm not cutting anything out? Or putting you in a corner type thing?
Yeah, I mean,
My
come
bad.
on. No.
You do you.
I had to tell Paul Garcia that, he had to settle down. So that's what's exciting about this. In my district, I think we've got more commonalities than differences. Tell me one person that doesn't want to have a strong economic welfare. Tell me a family or person that doesn't want the best for their kids. Right? That goes both ways.
And it's just a matter of looking at who, as far as these senators, as far as just any type of representation, who's going to do a better job of making sure those things get better or continue to be good.
And what's the better job?
What do you mean? What's the better job?
When you say someone that's going to do a better job, what does that look like? Is that personality? Is that charisma? Is that an individual that follows? Or is it policy based?
Exactly. It's policy based.
Are we realizing more than ever, policy really should be at the forefront when it comes to the voter? I think, you would hear Bill Clinton and others would always say, stupid, it's the economy, right? The economy is just a basic talking point that people go to. Are you better off you were today than you were yesterday or whatever? You always want to be better off, right?
Yeah.
You always want to be moving towards the direction, growing, economic stability, whatever that better off looks like for you. And that's the question the voters are asking. They're looking at their pocketbook. Is it hurting them paying $4.46 right now? Absolutely. Their pocketbook is emptying out pretty quickly through policies like Rebuild Illinois, right? 38 cents to the gallon you're being taxed on for infrastructure. But now we're going to try to blame the blame somewhere else. Oh, supply chain, it's the war of this, COVID,
it's not our fault.
The pandemic. Oh, it's not your fault. But then I ask, who put those policies in place that raised my taxes?
Right. It'd be the Democratic governance, right?
Well, they've been in control for a long time, right? The Madigan machine. Who's been part of that? Corrupt politicians on both sides now. It's not just Democrats. There have been Republicans that have gotten caught up in corruptions. So that's why I really want to preach is, yes, I stand for Republican principles when it comes to supporting small businesses, pro-life, pro-family, pro-gun. But is there other policies and other things that the Dems do great too in some areas? Sure, absolutely. Can Republicans do a better job stewarding Mother Earth, our planet? Absolutely.
I like the language you're speaking right now.
Right?
Yes, both sides do some things better than the others.
Yeah. Now, do I expect a low-income family to buy an EV vehicle?
Of course not.
Right,
course not.
but why do we have policies and expectations by 2035 we're going to have this agenda, 2030 we're going to do this. People have got needs for today.
Yes, exactly.
It's not needs for 2035. Sorry, that just sounds so weird when I'm saying it, because that seems far away, but really it's not. So that's where I really want to focus. I don't want to get up in the national stuff. I know it's a trickle down. Really, the constituents. You go to the south side of Peoria, they call it a food desert. There's no access to food there. There's no small businesses there. The violence is high. Families don't feel safe. Small businesses don't feel safe. And then I look at my opponent and I say, what have you done to make Peoria stronger?
What will you do to make Peoria stronger?
Well, one of the things is law enforcement. People do want law enforcement. People want law and order. In order to have law and order, you've got to have a message that criminals aren't getting off easy. Victims are being heard. And that's not happening with corrupt DAs, corrupt legal system. I've said earlier, one bad apple spoils a lot, but what happens to all the good apples that are there in the batch, right? We still keep them, right? We don't get rid of it. And so what's hard is you will have some police that aren't doing the right thing. But does that mean all police are doing the bad things? No. You need to condemn the ones that are not doing the right things, give them the proper training, but you don't label the whole group as anti-racist or whatever what label you want to put on them. You don't defund them, right? And so then you've got violence rising. You look at Lori Lightfoot, the scandal that just came out.
She's the mayor of Chicago, for anyone.
Mayor of Chicago. Anti-police rhetoric, defunding the police.
That's the last place you should ever defund the police is Chicago.
Chicago. But look at how much police officers she has as her personal security.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you are so anti-rhetoric of the police, why are you using them for your personal security? So you're telling me the lady down the street doesn't have that same right to have the police show up in her neighborhood to protect and serve those in that area?
Right. I know it's awfully big talk for someone that relies on them so heavily in her personal daily life. I don't know what's up with Lori Lightfoot. I really don't. But she apparently appeals to the Democratic voters that live in Chicago on an emotional basis, most likely.
But it's not just all the riots that happened during the defund our police movement didn't just happen in Chicago. If you remember, our own Target in Normal was looted.
I remember because I was trying to find in the Walmart too. I was
trying to find
a printer
you had
there
Best Buy looted, right?
Right.
It's not just Chicago. It's a Democrat message point that goes around. So and what happens during every election season is you see the Democrats changing their narrative a little bit, right? They're trying to become more moderate. Well, no. We remember. Those voters aren't going to forget.
You hope we remember anyway.
Well, and those are still being impacted today. The south side of Peoria with the crime, same with the west side of Peoria.
Do you continue?
Yeah.
Sorry, I wanted to say something.
Please say.
We're getting towards the end of this, just for the sake of not giving people too long of a podcast.
I'm bored.
I'm
telling my own stories. I can't imagine to the listeners.
Don't get me wrong.
They're loving the rambling.
I enjoy this thoroughly. I could talk to you for hours and hours. Just people, I don't know. People like to sit down and watch the whole thing in one sitting, and sometimes they get upset with me. I get messages like, Paul, I had to put it on pause. I had to finish it the next day. You know what? Part of me wants to say, tough, listen to the whole thing in parts. That's perfectly fine, and everyone can. But just for the sake of I'm just trying to keep it condensed and trimmed, trying to trim the fat a little bit.
I don't blame you, listeners.
That is not a knock on your
No,
ability to
not a
retain
knock
the
on me,
listeners.
but I mean, people's attention spans,
That's right. With things like TikTok, what are you going to do?
No, I mean, I can't get mad at a brother or sister for that. Come on now.
Okay, I want to ask this, though. First of all, do you think, we're talking about some people are getting sick with democratic legislation policy and things like that. There's a big influx of people moving into red states and away from blue states. The states that gained the most congressional seats were red states. Do you think that there's a red wave coming through Illinois? Do you think Illinois, and maybe then as a nation as a whole? I know you don't want to talk about the country as a whole too much, but still.
Oh, a red wave's coming. A red wave is coming. And what's exciting is really Virginia was at the forefront.
Blue state gone red, yeah.
Well, and you were looking at some of those counties, Fairfax, Loudoun County. If you saw how they voted, a lot of them voted red for the first time in 20 plus years, 30 plus years. And what was happening was it was a grassroots movement where you had everyday parents like me. I'm not a career politician. I'm not a politician. That steps up and it says, you know what? I want better for my son. I want better for my small business. I wanted to see great young talent stay in Illinois. But you know what they say? We can't because of the taxes, the policies. We'd rather move to Florida where there's freedoms. They didn't shut the economy. People saw their growth still. They got to enjoy life. Their kids were happier.
Yeah.
So I think people are starting to realize, I think COVID opened a lot of people's eyes of what was truly happening with local politics, with school board issues, right? Mm-hmm. A lot of parents had no idea until they started doing the e-learning stuff or saw the books, saw the materials. And look at some of the legislation that's come across in Illinois, mm-hmm. right? Your 12-year-old daughter can get an abortion without her parents knowing, right? She doesn't need parental consent.
Yeah, that's insane. What's up with this? I can't believe, but it's true. There are a lot of people that think that that's actually a good thing. That's a good idea. I used to think it was they were just putting these things into place, these laws into place, these policies into place, just to get the votes of crazy young people that were dumb. And they're like, that sounds nice. I like that. More abortion, freedom, women's rights. I thought they were just doing these things to get votes to keep them in office because that's a powerful position. They have a lot of networking capabilities that they otherwise wouldn't have had. But I actually think there are a lot of people that think that's a good thing, and they're like, I'm fighting for this. But I want desperately to have those people on. I was this close to having the head guy at the Democratic Party here in McLean County on the show this week. He unfortunately had to cancel, but I hope I'll have him on soon.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating.
It is fascinating. And, as a 12-year-old, I can't imagine making such a life-altering decision without your parents, and then knowing that my tax dollars, I'm paying for that.
That's the weird part. Yeah,
I'm not. So that's where it's like, who's advocating for me when it's my tax dollars? Like, I don't want to pay for that. Now, if the private sector, if they want to open and cover that.
Mm-hmm. That is technically their freedom at this point.
Right. Maybe it's not as controversial, right?
Right.
Why do I not see the private sector? Why are there not doctors stepping up privately and saying, you know what? I so believe in this cause. I'm going to donate for this 12-year-old girl to get her own abortion. I'm going to cover her costs. I won't charge you insurance. Mm-hmm. I will do everything at zero cost.
Yeah.
You don't see that, right?
Yeah, and it's like, how do we limit the amount of times that someone is 12 years old and is in need of an abortion? Well, that's complicated, and I think that's a whole other conversation. It's like, you can't do you just enable that type of thing and say, hey, here's a way out for when that does happen, and expect the cases where that is necessary to go down? It's a cultural thing largely, I believe. The sexual revolution is in no way, shape, or form a good thing.
No, it's major trauma to the body.
Oh gosh, especially at 12 years old.
A 12-year-old, right? So then is that child abuse when we're putting that kind of risk to the child too? Mm-hmm. I mean, these are some of the things. It's not just like, I decided to dye my hair purple today.
Right.
No, you're removing a human being you're removing a child from a child.
And I've spoken to women that have had abortions, and they sure are not happy about it later on. And I mean, that's not always the case. Don't get me wrong. Like, plenty of women are very happy that they got it done. And I'm sure moments where they think about what their child's life would have looked like and what their life would have looked like with that child come up, and that's sad. But anyway, that's a whole nother topic.
It is, yeah.
It's really incredible, though, that whole topic.
No, it is. It's I just know I don't want to pay for it.
No, that's for darn sure. Yeah.
So
I wish we could discuss these things, like the people that are actually in charge, that are in Congress, that are in political positions, talk about these issues at length on a podcast. That's why I think the power of a podcast is totally underrated, because you just talk, and if I say something you don't agree with, guess what? You have unlimited time to get back at me, and we're going to see whose point rises to the top, whose opinion actually withstands the flame and who comes out the winner, type of thing, and everyone can listen to it. That's the power of the podcast, man.
Well, and I will be the winner of the 46th district.
You think so?
Oh.
That was the question I asked you at the beginning of this, so.
I will win.
Let's go. Okay.
I will win.
You're going to beat the career politician, huh?
He is almost 74 years old. How many doors is he knocking on? When I was collecting signatures for my petitions to get my name on the ballot, they knew who Dave Kaler was, but they said, you know what? Dave Kaler has never showed up to my front door in almost 20 years. And here you are pushing a stroller with my baby, snowstorms and whatnot, getting to know my people and hearing their needs and going into their living rooms and having conversation and saying where you're at in life. They were shocked. The guy that's supposed to be representing them hasn't done that. Now, he may get to pick and choose, right? He's probably had his walking list of Democrat houses and what. Mm-hmm. I didn't do that. I've got people that I was with, and they said, well, why don't you do walking list? These are going to be Republicans. They'll sign your petitions. It'll be easy, blah, blah, blah. And I said, no, I want to get to know my constituents. I want to get to know the moderates, the libertarians, the Democrats, the Republicans. I want to get to know everyone. They're all in my districts. I want to be representing them as much as I can as one voice. Now, we're going to have disagreements, but we're going to have a lot more in common than the disagreements, I believe.
Amazing. I like where your head's at, and it looks like you're confident. It sounds like you know what you're talking about. It's all amazing. And just as we wrap up here, what do you want people to know about this upcoming election? Where can they go? What do you want them to know?
Yeah. So what's exciting is everyone is up on the ballot this election season because of the redistricting. Just like what you saw in Virginia, I don't believe anyone is safe this time around. And this is why I believe a red wave is coming. I think the grassroots movement is strong. You've got mama bears, papa bears, whatever you want to call them. First time folks that are getting involved in politics are realizing, hey, we've got to stop the course we're on right now if we want better.
Right.
And so don't underestimate the moms that are running in politics for the first time.
Mm-hmm. The passion is surely there for them, that's for sure.
Well, right, because what's on the line? What's on the line for them?
Their kids' well-being.
Their kids' well-being. That's right. No government will know what's best for your child.
That's an interesting point.
You're going to be your best advocate for your child. No politician will know what is best for your child. And we've got policies that have been passed that they believe they know what's best for your child, but they don't. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to leave it on that.
Okay,
I'm going to end it on that.
When is the election, though?
So primary got changed. It's now June 28th. I don't have a primary. There are great primary races within the Republican Party. So honestly, I know people are worried about voter integrity and some scandals in the past. We've got to show up in numbers. If the Republicans show up and vote, we will outvote the Democrats. I mean, that's my number one message is, I don't care if I'm not in your district. But what I do care is go out and support those that are representing your values and the policy that you want to see come forward. Because it makes a difference. You think, oh, my vote doesn't count, da-da-da. It does. And like I said, because this is a redistricting year, nobody is safe. Everyone is forced to run a campaign. Mm-hmm. So if you want to flip seats in Illinois and across the U.S., make sure you're voting on June 28th and then that first Tuesday in November for the general election.
And the general election's a big deal.
Mm-hmm. So early voting will start in May for those that participate in early voting. And then June 28th is the primary. And then general election is that first Tuesday of November.
Okay. Got it. First Tuesday of November is when that's the first time that they can vote for you because you're not in the primary.
That's right. I don't have a primary.
Why don't you have a primary?
There was not any other Republican that decided to run. I'm the only one that decided to run on the Republican side. And then Dave Kaler clearly is the incumbent, so he's on the Dem side.
Understood. Okay. You think Darren Bailey's going to win the governor race?
So I do, and I think he's going to win the primary. And that's the first race he needs to win.
Right.
Before he can run a solid race against J.B. Pritzker. I'm telling you, Darren is speaking to a lot of those moms and dads that feel like they've been silent and silenced at the school board hearings. The small businesses that got devastated during the lockdowns. You know, I think besides him just advocating, you can see by his voting record too. He's not just doing the talk, he's doing the talk and the walk.
Right. Have you seen just today or just yesterday actually, is from the Politico, Illinois Politico. I don't know what this is. Actually, my dad sent me the link, but looks like the Democratic Governors Association is pouring $728,000 into a statewide advertising blitz focused on the Illinois Republican race for governor. Have you heard that?
I did not.
Yeah.
Now, I believe they've got a thing against Richard's campaign that they're doing an ad.
And heinous criminals, domestic abusers, and sexual assault.
Yeah, it was really interesting. But I didn't get a chance to ask you about that, but it is recent
No, I'm
news.
not in the governor race. We need to have Darren Bailey come.
That's right. Look, man, I've been trying to get Darren Bailey on the show for longer than probably anyone. So, and you're my in.
Not me, but we know.
You have dinners with the guy and stuff like that?
Well, we've got connections. Not just me, but right. David Paul Blumenshine.
Of course, yes.
He's the regional coordinator for him.
Right.
So there's multiple avenues we can try to get that door open. It's an invite.
There we go.
Hello, friend.
It's going to happen, that's for sure. But anyway, June 28th is the primary, and vote for you on the first Tuesday in November, right?
Yeah, but they can also vote for me in the primary.
You said you're not in the... What?
Well, I'm in the primary. I just don't have someone that's primarying me.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense? So you will see my name on the ballot in June and in November.
Got it. Okay.
But if you're a registered Republican, I'm the only name you'll see in June and in November.
Understood. Okay.
So I don't technically have a primary. Does that make sense?
Yes.
No? Okay.
Yes. You're not running against anyone in the primary, but your name's still there. If you'd like to check the box, go ahead.
That's right. And I will check my own box.
Of course. All right. Well, Desi Anderson, that was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for talking. I could talk for an hour more with you, honestly, but for the sake of time and the sake of our listeners' time, we'll go ahead and cut it off here. Thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Paul.
Hey, the pleasure is all mine. Boom.